Beskar can stop blaster fire, explosions, even lightsabers. But you know what it can't stop? Being an important character. And look, I'm not here to lecture you about fictional metals. You already know this. You've been screaming it in comment sections for 20 years. Every time someone posts a video about how incredible Beskar is, how revolutionary Phrik alloy was, how the Dark Troopers were basically unkillable murder machines, you're already typing the same thing. Then why did Luke cut through them like butter? You're right. You've always been right. And today, we're going to prosecute this case properly, starting with the most egregious offenders in Star Wars history. The machines that were hyped as unstoppable, built from lightsaber-resistant alloys, and presented as the ultimate Imperial weapon. The Dark Troopers. These walking nightmares have a history that stretches back further than most fans realize. Before The Mandalorian. Before Disney. Before the expanded universe got rebranded as Legends and shoved into a corner. The Dark Trooper program was born in 1995 in a video game called Star Wars: Dark Forces. And the story of their creation tells you everything you need to know about how Star Wars treats Invincible materials. General Rom Mohc was the mastermind, an Imperial officer who looked at the Empire's military doctrine and saw a fundamental weakness. Stormtroopers were squishy. They died in droves. The armor they wore, that iconic white plastoid composite, offered about as much protection as a philosophical suggestion. Blaster bolts punched through it. Rocks thrown by teddy bears apparently defeated it. The Empire's endless supply of soldiers only mattered because they needed an endless supply. The survival rate was embarrassing for a galactic superpower. Mohc believed the future of Imperial warfare wasn't better trained humans, but something far more ambitious. He wanted to build soldiers that couldn't be killed. Not soldiers who were unlikely to die. Not soldiers who might survive longer than average. Soldiers whose very construction made death functionally impossible. The Dark Trooper project unfolded in 3 phases, each more terrifying than the last. Phase 1 wasn't a droid at all. It was an exoskeleton, powered armor designed to augment human soldiers. Picture a stormtrooper encased in a walking tank, their strength multiplied, their vulnerability reduced. The concept borrowed from real-world military research. If you can't make the soldier tougher, wrap them in something that is. Phase 1 Dark Troopers were prototypes, proof-of-concept units that demonstrated Mohc's vision could actually work. They proved the engineering was sound. They proved the Empire could manufacture something genuinely dangerous. Phase 2 took the next logical step. Why bother with the human at all? These were fully autonomous battle droids, humanoid in shape but stripped of biological weakness. No fear, no fatigue, no hesitation. No morale to break, no families to threaten, no possibility of defection or doubt. Phase 2 units carried assault cannons capable of laying down suppressive fire that would pin entire squads. They were faster than stormtroopers, stronger than stormtroopers, and considerably harder to kill than stormtroopers. In the Dark Forces game, encountering a Phase 2 unit meant your health bar was about to have a very bad day. But Phase 3? That's where Mohc's ambition became truly unhinged. The Phase 3 Dark Trooper was the pinnacle. A 7-foot-tall killing machine constructed from Phrik alloy, the same material used to forge electrostaff weapons capable of blocking lightsabers. In Legends continuity, Phrik was explicitly described as one of the rarest lightsaber-resistant substances in the galaxy. Not just blaster-proof, not just explosion-resistant, lightsaber-resistant. The kind of armor that should make a Jedi's primary weapon about as useful as a flashlight pointed at a brick wall. The original Dark Forces game understood how to make players fear these things. Mohc manufactured his army aboard the Arkhammer, a massive factory ship that served as mobile production facility and command center for the entire Dark Trooper program. This wasn't some ground-based installation that the rebels could bomb from orbit. The Arkhammer moved. It hid. It pumped out killing machines in quantities that would eventually overwhelm any opposition through sheer numbers, even if individual units weren't already terrifying enough on their own. And they were terrifying. Players who made it through the Gromus Mines level remember the first time a Phase 3 unit appeared. The sound design alone was enough to spike your heart rate. Heavy metallic footsteps, the whine of charging weapons, the knowledge that your blaster, the weapon that had gotten you this far, was about to become almost completely useless against what was coming around that corner. Phase 3 Dark Troopers could absorb punishment that would scrap lesser droids. They kept coming. They didn't flinch. They didn't retreat. The game forced you to learn that running was often smarter than fighting. Rom Mohc himself wore a modified Phase 3 suit in the final confrontation. His faith in his creation was absolute. He had built the perfect soldier, clad himself in its armor, and waited for the rebel to come challenge his life's work. The boss fight was genuinely difficult. Players died repeatedly. The Dark Trooper program's ultimate expression seemed, for a while, to actually be as invincible as advertised. Kyle Katarn killed him anyway. The lightsaber-resistant Phrik alloy, the enhanced strength and weapons systems, the culmination of Imperial military engineering. None of it saved Rom Mohc from a protagonist who needed to win for the story to end properly. The Arc Hammer was destroyed, the Dark Trooper program was terminated, and the lesson should have been clear. Invincible materials are only invincible until they're inconvenient. This should have been our first warning. But Dark Forces was 1995, ancient history by entertainment standards. The Dark Troopers faded into legends obscurity, occasionally appearing in Battlefront games as premium units, referenced in sourcebooks and wikis, remembered fondly by fans who'd experienced that genuine terror of facing them in-game. For 25 years, they existed as this shared memory of what Star Wars could do when it really wanted to create something frightening. Then, The Mandalorian brought them back. December 18th, 2020. Season 2 finale. The Rescue. The show understood exactly how to reintroduce these machines to an audience that might never have played Dark Forces. This wasn't a callback for longtime fans. This was a complete reconstruction of the Dark Trooper threat from the ground up. New generation of viewers? Show them why these things matter. Make them understand what the Empire was building in the shadows. The Mandalorian spent an entire season establishing Dark Trooper threat level. Episode after episode dropped references and glimpses. Brief shots of dormant units in storage. Moff Gideon's quiet confidence whenever the subject arose. The show was building to something, and audiences who paid attention knew it. Moff Gideon wasn't just the primary antagonist. He was a man who had survived the fall of the Empire and built something new from its ashes. He'd been a credible threat to Din Djarin for 2 full seasons. He commanded Imperial remnant forces with genuine tactical competence. He carried the Darksaber itself, a weapon with millennia of Mandalorian history behind it. When he unveiled his Dark Trooper platoon, the show wanted us to understand. This was the trump card. This was the weapon that would change everything. This was what Gideon had been working toward while our heroes chased bounties and protected Grogu. 3rd-generation battle droids. Humanoid, heavily armored, capable of independent spaceflight. They could launch from a ship, fly through the vacuum of space, and breach enemy vessels without requiring transports or docking procedures. Strong enough to punch through starship holes. The canonical series doesn't explicitly name Phrik alloy, but the narrative treatment is unmistakable. These machines are constructed to withstand anything the galaxy can throw at them. Moff Gideon gloats about their capabilities. Watch his face when he discusses them. The guy who's been hunting Din Djarin, who commands Imperial remnant forces, who carries the Darksaber. He acts like a man who's already won the moment the Dark Troopers deploy. His confidence isn't bluster. It's informed by understanding exactly what he's unleashed. He's seen what these things can do. Bo-Katan Kryze, an elite Mandalorian warrior who has fought her entire life, who was raised in a culture that defines itself through combat excellence. She reacts to Dark Trooper deployment with visible concern. This is a woman who helped lead Death Watch, who survived the Great Purge, who has faced down threats that would break ordinary soldiers. She's fought Jedi. She's fought Sith. She's seen the worst the galaxy has to offer. The Dark Troopers worry her. Cara Dune and Fennec Shand, both hardened fighters with extensive combat experience, share that concern. The entire strike team's demeanor shifts when they realize what's aboard Moff Gideon's cruiser. These aren't the clanking B-1 battle droids from the prequels, the ones that provided comic relief by getting dismembered in amusing ways while saying, "Roger, Roger." These aren't the B-2 super battle droids that went down to concentrated fire. These are apex predators, top of the food chain, the evolutionary endpoint of Imperial military engineering. Then the show proves it. One Dark Trooper gets loose in the cruiser corridor. One unit, singular. And Din Djarin, the protagonist, the guy in full Beskar who has survived everything the galaxy has thrown at him for 2 seasons, fights it. The droid ragdolls him like a child's toy. Din gets thrown against walls. The impacts ring through his armor with a sound that suggests even Beskar has limits against this kind of mechanical force. He gets punched repeatedly by mechanical fists designed to breach starship hulls. He's subjected to a beating that would reduce an unarmored human to something requiring a mop to clean up. Remember what Din's armor has survived before this moment. Blaster bolts in early Season 1, multiple direct hits to his cuirass during the escape from Navarro with Grogu. The energy dissipated across Beskar's surfaces in showers of sparks, the same weapons that killed unarmored characters instantly throughout the series. Din walked away like he'd been hit with paintballs. A cantina explosion by Season 1's conclusion. Others in the blast radius were incapacitated or killed outright. Din's armor smoked. He stood up and kept fighting. The Beskar apparently provides both penetration resistance and some degree of blast mitigation. Armor that doesn't just stop direct hits, but cushions the concussive force that would rupture internal organs. On November 27, 2020, the episode The Jedi provided the most explicit canonical demonstration of Beskar's lightsaber resistance in Star Wars history. Ahsoka Tano, trained by Anakin Skywalker himself, veteran of the entire Clone Wars, wielder of dual white-bladed lightsabers, struck directly at Din's forearm guards. These are weapons that cut through blast doors, that bisect battle droids without slowing, that penetrate virtually any other material in the galaxy. They bounced off. Shower of sparks. Zero penetration. Ahsoka Tano, one of the most skilled Force users alive, could not scratch a bounty hunter's vambraces. The visual was unambiguous. Lightsabers, in 2020, cannot penetrate Beskar when the person wearing it is the main character of a flagship Disney Plus property. This is the armor the Dark Trooper was overwhelming. Din only survives by exploiting a specific weakness, jamming his Beskar spear through the droid's neck, finding the gap in construction where the head connects to the body. Even then, it's close. Even then, you're watching a protagonist barely escape a single unit. He's gasping. He's staggered. He nearly died. And there's an entire platoon in the cargo hold. The mathematics are simple. Din nearly died fighting one. There are dozens more. The strike team is elite, but they're exhausted from the boarding action, low on ammunition, pinned down, and facing an enemy that just demonstrated the ability to brutalize their most protected member. The Dark Troopers begin cutting through the blast doors. The clock is ticking. The heroes have no good options. This is masterful tension building. The show has spent 40 minutes of this episode, and multiple episodes before it, establishing exactly how dangerous these machines are. The audience understands the stakes. The characters understand the stakes. The Dark Troopers are coming, and when they arrive, this is going to be a massacre. Then Luke Skywalker arrives. A single X-Wing appears on the cruiser's sensors. One ship, one pilot. The Dark Troopers detect the intrusion and redirect toward the new threat. A humanoid figure cutting through the airlock with a green lightsaber. What follows is approximately 90 seconds of screen time that systematically demolishes everything the episode just established. Luke enters the corridor. The same blade he built before Return of the Jedi, the weapon he used to confront Darth Vader and the Emperor, ignites with its familiar hum. The Dark Trooper platoon advances. These lightsaber-resistant, hull-punching, protagonist-nearly-killing war machines converge on a single target. Luke Skywalker cuts through them like they're made of warm cheese. The lightsaber that supposedly cannot penetrate their armor, Phrik alloy, the material explicitly described as lightsaber-resistant in decades of Star Wars lore, slices through Dark Trooper limbs with zero visible resistance. There's no struggle, no spark suggesting the blade is meeting opposition. Units get bisected at the torso. Units get decapitated. Arms are severed. Torsos are pierced. The machines that just brutalized the main character of a flagship Disney Plus property are reduced to sparking scrap by a Jedi who never breaks stride. Luke doesn't take hits, doesn't seem particularly challenged. The Force flows through him. He crushes one unit with a casual gesture, crumples another against a wall, deflects incoming fire without looking. The Dark Troopers don't adapt, don't exploit weaknesses, don't demonstrate the tactical capability that should come with advanced combat programming. They attack, and they are destroyed, and the armor that was supposedly designed to counter exactly this kind of threat provides approximately 0 seconds of meaningful protection. Watch the sequence again. Count the seconds. Note the number of units destroyed. Do the math on how long each Dark Trooper survives against Luke's lightsaber. 2 seconds? 3? These machines that nearly killed Din Djarin, a fight that occupied significant screen time and demonstrated genuine danger, are dispatched faster than Luke can probably say their designation. The platoon is gone inside 2 minutes. You know what changed between the Din Djarin fight and the Luke Skywalker massacre? Nothing about the Dark Troopers. Same armor, same construction, same stated capabilities, same Phrik alloy, or its canonical equivalent. The machines that entered the corridor against Luke were functionally identical to the unit that nearly killed Din. What changed was narrative necessity. The scene with Din needed to establish threat. It needed to demonstrate that Dark Troopers were dangerous, that the heroes were in genuine peril, that the stakes were real. So the armor worked. The construction held. The Dark Trooper was everything it had been hyped to be. The scene with Luke needed to establish dominance. It needed to deliver a crowd-pleasing rescue that would justify the de-aging CGI and the secrecy around the cameo. It needed to show Luke Skywalker at the height of his powers, the legendary Jedi Master, the hero who redeemed Darth Vader and destroyed the second Death Star. The audience had to feel the catharsis of watching an unstoppable force meet an immovable object. The Force won, obviously. So the armor stopped working. The Phrik alloy that had resisted Din's attacks suddenly offered no resistance to Luke's. The machines that had demonstrated tactical competence moments earlier became target practice. The Dark Troopers' protective properties adjusted accordingly. Their Invincible alloy worked exactly as well as the plot required it to work at any given moment. Not 1 second longer. This isn't a retcon. This isn't different eras of filmmaking with different standards of internal consistency. This happens within the same episode, the same 45-minute runtime. Threat established in Act 2. Threat eliminated in Act 3. Armor properties changing between scenes, like someone flipped a switch in the writer's room. But here's the thing that makes the Dark Trooper massacre truly damning. It's not an isolated incident. It's not a one-time inconsistency that slipped past quality control. It's the most concentrated example of a pattern that Star Wars has repeated for decades across multiple media, multiple writers, and multiple generations of storytelling. Look at Jango Fett. May 16, 2002, Attack of the Clones. The most feared bounty hunter in the galaxy stands in the Petranaki arena on Geonosis, wearing full Mandalorian armor. The same T-visored helmet, the same layered plates, the same metallurgical tradition that protects Din Djarin from everything the galaxy throws at him. Jango's equipment represents the cultural heritage of a warrior people who spent generations fighting Jedi. The Mandalorian Jedi Wars shaped both civilizations. Mandalorian armor was specifically developed to counter Force users with plasma swords. Jango fires at Mace Windu. Windu deflects with characteristic precision. A charging Reek, one of the arena's massive horned beasts, collides with Jango, damaging his jetpack and grounding him. This proves fatal. Windu closes on foot. 1 swing. 3 seconds. Jango Fett's helmeted head separates from his body and rolls across the arena sand, while his young son Boba watches from the stands. The Mandalorian armor, the stuff that would later bounce Ahsoka's lightsabers off Din's forearms, offered no more protection than a paper bag. Mace's blade didn't even slow down. No sparks, no resistance, no evidence that the weapon encountered anything other than unprotected flesh. Fan theories have spent 20 years trying to explain this. Mace hit the neck gap between helmet and gorget. But are we supposed to believe Mandalorian armorers never developed adequate neck protection across millennia of fighting lightsaber-wielding opponents? Jango wore counterfeit armor, but the galaxy's most notorious bounty hunter, trusted by Count Dooku for high-stakes operations, wore fake equipment? The Force guided the blade to an exact vulnerability, but that's just another way of saying, plot armor beats Beskar. The simplest explanation requires no theoretical gymnastics. Jango Fett died because the narrative required him to die. His function was to establish Boba's origin, provide clone army DNA, and demonstrate Mace Windu's combat prowess. Once those boxes were checked, his equipment became irrelevant. The armor worked as well as the plot needed it to work. Look at pre-Vizsla. February 2nd, 2013. The Clone Wars. Season 5, Episode 16. The Lawless. The leader of Death Watch, wearing full traditional Mandalorian armor, challenges Darth Maul for control of his faction. He holds the Darksaber, the unique black-bladed lightsaber forged by the first Mandalorian Jedi, passed down as a symbol of leadership across generations. The duel that follows actually shows the Beskar working at first. Maul's red blade strikes Vizsla's plates. They deflect. His vambraces block. His pauldrons spark but hold. For the first half of the fight, Vizsla's armor provides meaningful protection. He survives strikes that would have killed an unarmored opponent. The Beskar functions exactly as advertised. Then the narrative requires a conclusion. One swing. The Darksaber, constructed from Mandalorian-forged materials that should theoretically interact with Beskar as pure metallurgy, passes through Vizsla's neck as cleanly as Mace Windu's blade passed through Jango's 11 years earlier. Same vulnerable gap. Same impossible failure of protection. Same death. The Clone Wars had spent seasons establishing how effective Mandalorian armor was. This wasn't careless oversight. The show demonstrated the armor working correctly multiple times before requiring it to fail. Vizsla's Beskar helped him survive the duel longer than an unarmored opponent would have, but it couldn't protect him from his function in the story, which was to lose, to die, and to transfer power to a more dramatically interesting villain. Mandalorian armorers spent millennia developing anti-lightsaber technology. They fought the Jedi for generations. Their entire martial culture was built around surviving enemies with plasma swords. They apparently never figured out neck protection. Not once. Not ever. Across thousands of years. Against an enemy whose primary attack involves swinging at head height. Remarkable oversight, that. Look at General Grievous, May 19th, 2005. Revenge of the Sith. A purpose-built Jedi-killing machine. Former Kaleesh warlord, extensively modified with cybernetics. His exoskeleton constructed from exotic alloys specifically selected for durability in lightsaber combat. Trained under Count Dooku himself. Collected Jedi weapons as trophies from his kills. Could wield 4 lightsabers simultaneously using his mechanically enhanced limbs. His duel with Obi-Wan demonstrates his capabilities clearly. 4 spinning blades, mechanical arms splitting to double offensive capability. The fight is intense, chaotic, and showcases Grievous as a genuine threat. Obi-Wan resorts to severing Grievous's hands rather than attacking his armored body directly, suggesting that direct strikes against the general's plated torso are less effective than targeting his limbs. So how does the most heavily armored cyborg warrior in the Separatist military die? Obi-Wan picks up a blaster and shoots him repeatedly in his exposed organic heart. So uncivilized, Obi-Wan mutters afterward. The line reads like meta-commentary on the entire absurdity. Grievous's exotic alloys, his duranium plating, his entire cybernetic chassis built specifically to survive Jedi combat. None of it mattered. The armor worked perfectly. It just didn't cover the part that the script needed to remain vulnerable. When invincible armor can't be penetrated, the narrative routes around it. Find the gap. Shoot the gut sack. Whatever works. The pattern is consistent. The pattern is damning. And the Dark Troopers are its purest expression. Because with Jango and Vizsla, you can argue about neck gaps and helmet joints. With Grievous, you can argue about exposed organs and incomplete cybernetic coverage. But the Dark Troopers? They're fully enclosed battle droids. No biological vulnerabilities. No joints that need flexibility for head movement. No preserved organic hearts in exposed gut sacks. Their entire construction is armor. Every single component is protected by whatever lightsaber-resistant alloy the Imperial engineers selected. Luke's saber cuts through them anyway. Through the limbs. Through the torsos. Through components that should have been exactly as resistant as the chest plates that Din's spear struggled to penetrate. The blade that theoretically cannot damage Phrik alloy damages Phrik alloy. Repeatedly. Casually. Without any indication that it's encountering resistance. The Dark Troopers prove that it was never about the material. It was never about Phrik alloy, or Beskar, or exotic alloys, or lightsaber resistance. It was always about what the story needed to happen at any given moment. And speaking of characters whose armor actually works, let's discuss the anomaly. Din Djarin's Beskar protects him. Consistently. Spectacularly. Unlike Jango, unlike Vizsla, unlike the countless Mandalorians who died in the Great Purge despite wearing the same traditional equipment, Din survives. His survival catalog is genuinely impressive. Blaster bolts that would kill unarmored characters. Explosions that incapacitate others in the blast radius. Ahsoka Tano's lightsabers bouncing off his vambraces like he's wearing the most impenetrable substance in the galaxy. Because for him, he is. Din Djarin is the protagonist of a flagship Disney Plus property entering its 4th season. His armor works because his survival generates revenue. The Beskar that couldn't save Jango from Mace Windu, that couldn't save Vizsla from Maul, that couldn't save countless Mandalorians from the Purge. It protects Din from everything because Din is important. Same material, same cultural tradition, same metallurgical properties, different narrative weight. The variable isn't the composition, it's the character's contract status. Now, the prosecution acknowledges there are other materials worth mentioning. Other substances that Star Wars describes as special, significant, protective, and that have failed exactly when the story required them to fail. Laminanium, song steel, bronzium, all featured in various Star Wars sources, all described as having notable properties, all completely irrelevant when someone wearing them needed to die for narrative purposes. I'm mentioning them briefly, incompletely, deliberately, because I know some of you are already typing corrections in the comments. Good. Tell me what I missed. Fill in the gaps. Add the examples I didn't cover. Explain why I'm wrong about the specific properties of song steel and how it actually should have protected whoever died wearing it. That's how this works, right? You live to expand on what creators leave out. But the main prosecution rests on the Dark Troopers because they represent something unique in Star Wars' catalog of invincibility failures. They're not ancient Mandalorians, whose armor might have been different formulations. They're not cyborgs with obvious biological weak points. They're not warriors fighting decades apart under different filmmakers with different standards of internal consistency. The Dark Troopers are battle droids that were established as unstoppable threats and demolished as helpless targets within the same episode of the same television series. The narrative didn't wait years to contradict itself. The narrative contradicted itself in real time, within 45 minutes, in front of an audience that had just been told to be afraid of these machines. The Phrik alloy worked when Din fought one Dark Trooper. The Phrik alloy stopped working when Luke fought 30 of them. Same material, same construction, same episode, different narrative requirements. Some of you might argue this is how all fiction works. Main characters win, minor characters lose, protagonists survive, stories need resolution. What's the controversy? This isn't a scandal, it's just storytelling mechanics operating as designed. Here's the problem with that defense. Star Wars explicitly tells us it doesn't work this way. The franchise invests enormous world-building energy into establishing that certain materials provide certain protections. Sourcebooks describe Phrik's lightsaber resistance in technical detail. The Mandalorian dedicates multiple scenes to demonstrating Beskar's incredible protective properties. Characters discuss their equipment like it matters. Villains boast about their armor's invincibility. Protagonists seek out specific materials because those materials will keep them alive. We're supposed to care about whether someone wears Beskar or Durasteel. We're supposed to understand that equipment matters. We're supposed to believe the protective properties are real, consistent, reliable, because that's how world building works. Then the story ignores all of it whenever convenient. The Dark Troopers weren't just killed. They were killed after an entire season of setup, telling us they couldn't be killed. Their destruction isn't disappointing because Luke Skywalker is too powerful. It's disappointing because Star Wars spent hours of screen time telling us to be impressed by their durability, and then demonstrated that durability meant nothing the moment it became inconvenient. The franchise wants credit for detailed world building, while refusing to be bound by it. It asks us to memorize the properties of fictional metals, and then punishes us for expecting those properties to remain consistent. It builds hype around invincible machines, and delivers a 90-second demolition sequence. Jango's Beskar didn't save him from Mace Windu. Vizsla's Beskar didn't save him from Maul. Grievous's exotic alloys didn't save him from a blaster. The Dark Troopers' Phrik didn't save them from Luke. Din Djarin's Beskar protects him from everything. The variable isn't the material. It's the character's importance to ongoing revenue. So what have we proven today? That invincible materials in Star Wars are a marketing claim, not a physical property. That armor effectiveness is determined by narrative necessity, not metallurgical composition. That the same substance can deflect lightsabers in one scene and offer no resistance in another, depending entirely on who's wearing it and whether the story needs them alive. The Dark Troopers are the perfect case study because they demonstrate this principle with laboratory precision. Same armor composition throughout, same construction, same demonstrated capabilities. Radically different outcomes depending on who was swinging the lightsaber and what the scene needed to accomplish. No alloy, weave, or crystal has ever beaten the most powerful force in the galaxy, being a side character. The prosecution rests. But you already knew this. You've been saying it in comment sections for years. Every time someone posts a video praising the Dark Troopers' incredible construction, you're already asking the obvious question. Every time someone talks about Phrik Alloy's lightsaber resistance, you're already pointing out the obvious contradiction. You were right. Subscribe for more stories like this.